And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking James Vowles' opinion on Max Verstappen to his former team, yes, Mercedes. Should Max go to Mercedes? Well, at least James Vowles has said or suggested that Mercedes should be cautious and pretty much saying that no, if he was at Mercedes, he potentially would not sign him. Is he absolutely nuts or does he have a point? So I don't need to tell you that James Vowles is one of the best minds in the business when it comes to Formula 1. Look at what he's doing with the Williams team, and he's been very honest and open, and he is one of the most popular team bosses. But his opinion on Max is very interesting, and we'll get into it. He says, I don't think anyone would deny that he is extraordinary in what he can do. He said, though Vowles admits that Verstappen would add more performance as a Mercedes driver, he warns the team should stay away from signing the four-time champion. We've got a clip of the interview in a bit, but essentially, he says he comes with a lot of downsides as well that we have to acknowledge. And he says, and I think what Mercedes does have is a great culture with two drivers that are delivering near to the peak of the car and with one that's on the way up. Talking about George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. Now, before we get into what James Vowles says, this is from Sky, what they ended up talking about, I think, a Grand Prix or two ago, about whether Max should go to Mercedes, and this is what they were saying.
Max is, and if you've got a future-proof pairing like Russell and Antonelli, you don't need to spend tens of millions, north of 50 million.
I agree with Martin there. In terms of Max's performance, is he going to give that much more, millions more, than, for example, George Russell and Kimi Antonelli?
On another driver, if those two are getting the job done. But it was also pointed out to me this morning that the careers of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli are also managed by Mercedes-Benz.
So, like Red Bull is a Max Verstappen driver, yes, he nearly signed for Mercedes, he was very close. What Martin is suggesting that they are Mercedes through and through. They've been born and bred Mercedes, kind of like Hamilton with Mercedes. Obviously, he went to McLaren, but he's always had Mercedes backing. And is that then a failure of the Mercedes admitting that, no, we don't believe in our drivers and our driver program?
So one way or another, they control their future. But I think the story is, and it's quite harsh, I think, and George sat there when Toto said it in the press conference, like, we like to keep our drivers under pressure. So at the moment, George is only nailed on until the end of 2025.
Yeah, and he's got a point. George is only nailed on for the end of 2025, which is why this big question is coming. Now, the rumour is the Max Verstappen clause, if he's not so in a particular place come the summer break or at some point in the championship, he has an escape clause where he could leave the team. But let's get into what Nico Rosberg says.
I disagree. If Max is available, you pay for Max. Strongly.
Yeah, and that's from F1 Interesting 87. So, what Nico Rosberg said has got a point. I mean, you could make an argument both sides. Max is the best driver currently, or at least viewed as the best driver currently. He's struggling in the Red Bull, and I think given that we've now known the Red Bull is struggling, you need a good car to win a championship. Max would not have won the championship in a Mercedes last year, probably not a McLaren last year as well, although that could be potentially open to debate. Let's see what Max Verstappen warned of signing Red Bull driver by Williams boss James Vowles, despite F1 champion being extraordinary. So let's have a look at this then, shall we? Let's hit the play button, and it's quite an interesting interview.
Wie groß ist Ihre Sorge auch, dass
Nope.
sich Gedanken...
That's completely the wrong one. Where's it gone? There we go. Here it is.
Let's bring something else up to you. Some comments that you made. You asked about Max potentially going to Mercedes. What are your thoughts on that? There's so many rumours doing the rounds right now, and
Okay.
waiting to get that contract extension.
He is. I think he should.
The first thing is, as I said this morning, Max is absolutely extraordinary. I was blown away, for example, by Japan by his lap. There was no doubting up and down the pit lane.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Max Verstappen's lap was absolutely amazing in Japan, and James Vowles is accepting that Max Verstappen is an exceptional driver, which I don't think anyone has got any doubts over his talent and his speed.
How quick he is. It was more that Mercedes have a really good problem. They've got two excellent drivers, and that's more. Is Mercedes going to make a change in that regard? That's for them to really comment on.
Yeah.
the bit that they've got at the moment is a stable environment, a culture that works.
And they do have a stable environment. The two drivers seem to be getting on with each other. They're not getting in the way of each other. Yes, George Russell has very much been the team leader and has done, I think, an amazing job and is one of the drivers of the season, along with Oscar Piastri. And, you know, Verstappen a bit behind them, but he has done, I think, got the absolute maximum out of that Mercedes.
Drivers that are working together and one that's on the way up. And I think for them to chop and change that out for a driver as quick as Max still may not be the right decision. It's theirs to make, but that was more my commentary.
Now, obviously, he didn't say in that particular interview that he comes with a lot of downsides. But before we get into the downsides, yeah, I completely agree. Mercedes have a very good driver lineup at the moment. They're clearly very happy with their driver lineup. Toto Wolff has come out and said, "I'm not flirting elsewhere." But as we know, he's a bit economic with the truth when he says that, because he was blatantly flirting with Max. I mean, the two needed to get a room in the first half, at the very least, of the 2024 season before stating, it was Kimi Antonelli all along. Yeah, I mean, that was almost akin to a WWE wrestling angle, wasn't it? In terms of the swerve, the 180 turn on that storyline. So take a big pinch of salt with what Toto says, I think. But I think what James Vowles says, in relation to the downside, Max seemingly, kind of like Lewis Hamilton, some other drivers, has an entourage. That entourage is Jos Verstappen. And he is not... Well, he's not backwards about coming forwards onto how he feels his son is treated. You need to just go back and for the Carlos Sainz issue in the team, and last year with the comments about Christian Horner, which many people agree with. I thought he had a point as well, potentially. You know, it was all going a bit wrong then. Something needed to be done. I'm not saying Christian Horner, in hindsight, should have gone, but those comments weren't particularly helpful. And you've got the Dutch press being Max Verstappen, the big, you know, arguably at the moment one of the most famous guys from Holland. And then the Dutch press commenting on him, and then all the other press follows. So it would be a massive distraction or an issue potentially for Mercedes, something which George Russell and Kimi Antonelli do not do. And I think that's the downside there. And also Max, the way he talks to his engineers, yes, it's Max Verstappen, the way he is doesn't really seem very Mercedes-like. And I think the way they want to control the drivers maybe a bit more than Red Bull. I mean, I know that Lewis had a lot of freedom there, but I don't think that would gel well with Max Verstappen. And last but not least, this is what Guenther Steiner said. He said, "I think anyone who wants to win a world championship can live with Max's downsides. Maybe. Look at what he's doing with the Red Bull. That's for sure not the fastest car. Yes, it's not the fastest car, but to be fair, at Saudi Arabia, it was the second fastest car in Max's hands. In Japan, it was the second fastest car. We're talking like the slim margins. Because as we've seen, when Max doesn't have the fastest car, as with any driver, they cannot win. So, or nearly the fastest car. Anyway, Guenther Steiner went on saying, but he keeps on doing it. He's very quick. If James Vowles hasn't found that out, Max is very quick. James, I guess it's easy. When you're out of the limelight like Guenther Steiner, it's easy to say things like that. He probably would have said it when he was in the house. I really like the guy, and he's not afraid to give his opinions. I don't quite agree with that. Yes, Max is very quick. In terms of the downsides, you're absolutely right. And the if is, though, as I kept saying, going back to the current Mercedes driver lineup, if they didn't have a George Russell in there at the moment, absolutely you would consider it. But how much better is Max Verstappen than George Russell? Yeah, I give it. You can make a very good argument that he is better. Is he tens of millions better? No. And that's something that McLaren, when they supposedly were talking to Max about a race here, I think last year, and the number was rumoured to be lots, McLaren were like, no thanks. And look at McLaren now. They're doing very, very well. They wouldn't want a Max Verstappen. They've got an Oscar Piastri and a Lando Norris. Although you could make an argument that Max would be doing that McLaren better than maybe both of them. That's by the by. They're still, Oscar is leading the World Championship. Anyway, I digress. That's pretty much how we feel on the subject. I thought it would be interesting to do a video about it, and if you made it to the end, amazing. If you are not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. That will make us very happy. If you're already subscribed, you just clicking on this is enough. It's more than enough for us. But until then, hit that like button. If you want, comment below. Let us know what you think. But we'll speak to you soon. It is race week officially tomorrow, so hopefully we'll have our preview out. But until then, as I said, thanks for watching. Speak to you soon. But above all else, stay safe.